Introduction at all. As a teacher, lawyer, and missionary, Tim Kaine was first elected to office in 1994, serving as city council member, and 4 years later, the mayor of Richmond, Virginia. He became the lieutenant governor of Virginia in 2002 and was inaugurated as Virginia's 70th governor in 2006. In 2012, Tim Kaine was elected to the United States Senate and is one of just 30 people in American history to serve as a mayor, a governor, and a senator. From his early years, teaching job skills to teenagers in the Honduras, to winning one of the largest civil rights jury verdicts in a case involving discrimination, to pursuing federal fair housing legislation for LGBT people, Tim Kaine has spent his life fighting for justice and equality for all. As the author of the Fair and Equal Housing Act in the United States Senate, Tim Kaine has taken a lead role in ensuring the equal rights of LGBT people so that we are protected by federal law. Virginia is so lucky to have him as their champion in the Senate, and we are very lucky to have him as one of our unwavering allies. So please welcome Senator Tim Kaine. Senator, my pleasure. Thank you.
Hey everybody, great to be with you. Please have a seat. Thank you. It's fantastic to be with you. I know you've had a good morning. I know you're going up to the Hill to arm twist senators, which is always a really good thing to do. There's never too much arm twisting. You know, we always need more, especially on these really important issues. I'm great to be here with NAGLREP at HRC. I have one of my great staffers with me, Tobin, who works with me on these issues. Some of you might have also interacted with Phil Olaya, who's my legal counsel. Why does this matter to me? Let me start off by telling you about my legal career, and then I'm going to tell you about work I've done in the public policy space. I was a brand new lawyer beginning practice in Richmond in the fall of 1984. And I was the 12th lawyer at a 12-person firm. And here's what happens when you're at the bottom of the totem pole. Somebody comes with a case that needs help who can't pay, and they look around and they say, go talk to the newest, youngest person who's not yet busy. And my first client was a young woman by the name of Lorraine Hicks. Lorraine was strikingly similar to me, because she had just moved to a new city, and so had I. And she had just finished her schooling, and so had I. And she had just gotten a job, and so had I. And she just had looked for an apartment, and so had I. Now, my experience was a great one. That getting out of school and finding your first apartment and your first real job in a new city, that's stressful, but also exciting. And I had found an apartment and rented it, and it had been a really good experience. And she had found an apartment. She was staying with some friends and had called at lunch and tried to get the apartment and had been told, oh, yeah, it's open. If you want to come by in your lunch break to check it out, please do. When she got there, the guy looked in her face and said, oh, I'm sorry, it's already rented. Well, she felt like she'd been turned away because of the color of her skin. And she went back to her office and had the person sitting in the next cubicle call, hey, I want to come by after work. Is the place still available? Of course it's still available. When Lorraine described this to me, I kind of had one of those there, but for the grace of God, go I experiences, because, again, we were so similar, with the difference being she was a woman, I was a man. She had brown skin, I had white skin, and we had had very different experiences in a really pivotal way. As I heard her describe how it made her feel, I also realized, next time I go look for an apartment, I'm going to go with excitement because my first experience went fine. The next time she goes and looks for an apartment, she's going to go with a sense of fear or trepidation. Am I going to get treated badly because of these things I can't change about myself? I filed a case for her. It was slam dunk. We settled it very quickly. And then, having done that, I was now the expert on fair housing in Virginia. One case filed in federal court and settled, I was now the expert on fair housing in Virginia. And that started, my law practice was for 18 years before I had to step down when I was elected lieutenant governor, and 3/4 of it was plaintiffs' fair housing cases based on race, based on gender, based on family status, based on perceived or actual disability, apartments, homes, mortgages, homeowners insurance, threats of violence against people. I mean, I had some amazingly tragic cases in terms of the facts, but we were able to work and make real progress. And so that's how I come to this issue of passionate belief in equality in housing. The other thing I learned from Lorraine is, I'm probably like bet all of us feel this way. Things aren't that important. Relationships are important. People are important. Physical things are not that important. But if there is a physical thing that is more like a person than a thing, it's where you live. It's an extension of your personality. So housing is more like your person than it is like a thing. And so if you're discriminated against in housing, it really kind of goes to the core of your person in a way that is very, very vivid. And Lorraine's explanation of her experience to me kind of helped me realize that, as did other clients over the years. Having the chance then to get involved in public life, I have tried to do what I can to promote fair housing for all, including LGBT Virginians. The first big battle that we had with respect to equality for LGBTQ Virginians was when I became lieutenant governor and governor. Like most states, we have a Virginia Housing Development Authority that offers favorable low-income tax credit financing to developers who want to build properties. And there was a debate among the authority members in Virginia about non-discrimination provisions, whether the developers, in order to get the low-income tax credit financing, had to offer their properties to everybody, including LGBT Virginians. And we were able to win that debate by convincing, we didn't have to do it legislatively, we convinced enough of the authority members that they needed to be open to all, and they did. So now here we are, two pieces of legislation that I just want to mention to you, and I hope that you'll advocate strongly for it. I'm sure the first, you've heard about a lot, the Equality Act. We first introduced the Equality Act, I believe, in the last Congress, although time kind of runs together for me. But the idea is pretty simple. We can have the battle about civil rights and equality for LGBTQ people statute by statute, Title VII, public accommodation, voting rights, fair housing. Or we can just say every Civil Rights Act in the federal pantheon should be amended to include protection for people based upon sexual orientation or gender identity, and that's what the Equality Act would do. It would, in one stroke, create true equality across the entire civil rights space, whether it's a IDEA special ed assignment or housing. Let's make it equal is equal across all the federal civil rights statutes. That is the goal. That's the one that we want. I'm also mindful of the fact, though, that we often don't get everything we want when we want it. So I introduced in the Senate last year, essentially the Equality Act just within the fair housing space. So to change the Federal Fair Housing Act, which was passed in 1968, to provide the protection for people based on any discrimination on sexual orientation or gender identity. And so I'm actively pushing both, and what we do on these civil rights statutes is it's like going around, you won't like this analogy being real estate people, but rattling the doorknob to see which one will open so that you can go in. We'd love the Equality Act, and we'll get there if we could find a path forward on this fair housing bill specifically, and if that might be quicker, then we'll get there too. One other thing I wanted to mention, because I have another fair housing bill that I'm working on too, that just to put on the table for you. We're seeing a lot of discrimination in housing in Virginia, and this would especially be in rental, not purchases, based on source of income. Oh, I can't take your Section 8 voucher, because we don't accept Section 8 vouchers. I can't take your disability check. We don't accept it. Right now, you can turn somebody away based upon their source of income, and that's not viewed as discrimination. And that means especially for poor people who are in programs like Housing Choice or Section 8 vouchers, they end up with dramatically limited housing options in terms of where they can go. So this is an interesting one we're trying to put into the Federal Fair Housing Act as a protected class source of income. Now, if you think about it, if you have a Section 8 voucher or you participate in a Housing Choice program, you're going to have it not only now and next month, you're likely to have it for a while. It's a very reliable source of income. If I come to you as an apartment manager, I give you my paycheck, I could lose my job next week. But I'm asking you to look at my paycheck and then rent me an apartment for a year or whatever the term of the lease is on a job I could lose next week. So actually, a number of these sources of income that are vouchers, Section 8, DOD disability, veterans disability, they're very reliable sources of income. And yet, especially for low-income people, there's often a decision, well, we're going to turn you away, and instead of saying we're turning you away because you're low income, just say, well, we don't accept Section 8 vouchers. So that's a third bill that I have not, I had it in last year with Orrin Hatch of Utah, and I were the co-sponsors of that bill. He's retired, and I'm looking for my next Republican co-sponsor / victim to be together with me in this effort. But we're going to introduce that bill too. And that's, again, all part of the equality in real estate. Last thing I'll say, and then I'd love to open it up, take questions, take your advice, is in my work as a fair housing attorney, I often had fantastic support from real estate professionals. Was I suing real estate professionals? Yeah, I sued real estate agents, I sued banks, I sued insurance companies, I sued a lot of people. However, an awful lot of the work that I did was together with real estate professionals. Virginia hired me to write the state's fair housing manual for real estate professionals, and I wrote it together with a colleague who was a great realtor in Richmond, had a real passion for fair housing, and so I was kind of the legal guy, and he was the one that really talked about the practical aspects of being a realtor and doing it right. And so I never viewed the industry, real estate industry, as an adversary. There were bad apples in anything, even in politics on occasion. I mean, fancy that. But I was always able to work on these issues very well in tandem with real estate professionals. And I know the good thing about an organization like yours, you're passionately committed to your profession. You're passionately committed to LGBTQ equality. But you're passionately committed to equality for all in housing. And there's a lot of good work that needs to be done and that still can be done. You probably live in communities like communities in Virginia where the costs of housing are now really, there's equality in can you be treated the same, but then there's also all kinds of access issues that affect communities that we care about that we're seeing in Northern Virginia, other parts of the state. I know you're seeing them too. So there's a lot of good housing policy to be done, and you have an important role in helping us do it and do it better every day. So thank you for having me, and I'd love to open it up and take a question or two, take your advice. And then somebody said one or two might want a photo. I don't know why that would be the case, but if anybody does, I'm glad to do that too. So let me thank you and just open it up for questions. And Jeff, thank you for starting this. 11 years ago. Thank you for starting this. Yeah, in blue.
So, as far as the source of income, and I agree with that. But from another side of that, because I do represent a lot of landlords.
Yep.
In Baltimore who do not typically accept Section 8 vouchers.
Right.
Or vouchers, because it's not a protected class in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think on the other side of that is, there are so many of those who, they're very responsible individuals.
Right.
But the perception is that, oh, they're going to trash my house. I'm sure it's great that I'm going to get, the government funds
Right.
and it's going to be on time, but they're going to trash my house. They're not going to care about it because they're getting free money from the state.
Right.
So is there something that we can do or that can be put in place? I don't know if it's already in place to educate those who are recipients of those vouchers for, I don't know
Yeah.
how to say it, but
Yeah.
educate them on better care.
Sure.
Making sure that
Do I need to repeat it because you don't have a mic, or does everybody hear it? So I think that's a really good question. And I'll tell you, the other thing that I hear from the landlord community that I think is very legit is, hey, I'd take a Section 8 voucher if the paperwork weren't so tough. I mean, if I got a unit and I can rent to somebody coming in private, or I rent through Section 8, but before I can, I can basically strike the deal with you today if you come in and you want to put a deposit down private, but on Section 8, okay, I got to get the housing, authority to come into the inspection. Well, wait, I've already subject to city inspections. I couldn't offer this unit otherwise. And so if the red tape of Section 8 or housing choice programs is more intense, then that's on us to try to fix that. So I do think there's some concerns on the real estate side that point out problems in our programs that we need to fix. And so it could be education. I actually think if we could clear up some of the red tape issues, we would suddenly find dramatically higher percentages of landlords willing to say, sure, I'd love to take a Section 8 voucher. So part of what we're doing is we're redrafting the bill is starting to take into account some of that. And I will say this, I don't agree with Secretary Carson on everything. This is one, actually, trying to make the Section 8 housing choice programs more, trying to get more private involvement and solving some of these programs that limit private involvement is a priority of his, and that's an area where we can work on together. Yeah, please.
Hi, thank you so much, Mr. Kaine, for being here.
Yeah.
Jorge Soto with the National Fair Housing Alliance. We were
Great,
very
Jorge.
happy to be working with
Yeah.
you on all these bills. And
Thank you.
happy that you're moving forward with getting the source of income and veterans protections bill introduced.
The National Fair Housing Alliance has really been the thought leader on this issue, yeah.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about is an area that we don't really hear a lot about when discussing access to homeownership for veterans and in particular LGBTQ people. So before the ending of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, you know, many people were dishonorably discharged.
Yeah, right.
That means that they were no longer eligible for any services that veterans typically are eligible for, including the VA program, the VA loan program. Is there anything that can be done to make sure that something, whether it's this upcoming bill
Yeah.
or, you know, something else that we can work on, gets to the heart of the dishonorable discharge population that no longer has access to the
Yeah, what a great question. What a great question. I think there has been legislation introduced on that in the past that I have co-sponsored. I was not the lead on it, that I've co-sponsored, but you're asking it in a way that is making my wheel turn in a different direction, which is the one, because a bill like that gets introduced and it's a good bill, but it just may not get time on the Senate floor for a variety of reasons. The way to get something passed in the Senate, and this is different than the House, a good idea can pass in the House with majority. In the Senate, there's got to be a good idea. You have to get enough bipartisan support to get the 60-vote threshold, and then you have to attach it to something that's likely to move off the Senate floor. The one bill that moves off the Senate floor every year is the Defense Authorizing Bill. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. We're writing it right now. We'll probably finish it up before Memorial Day. So Tobin, I'm going to ask you to talk to Ryan, my military guy, when we get back. If we've had a bill dealing with, you know, basically expunging dishonorable discharges and changing them to honorable for anybody who was, you know, kicked out, then what we ought to do is fix that. And if we could get it attached in the NDAA, then it will just move when the NDAA moves. And I don't know that we've tried that in the past. So I think we may have a template bill that we could just put up as an NDAA amendment. So that's a really good idea. We'll take that back to the bill. Yeah. And we'll try, and we'll keep HRC just informed on that, because again, the NDAA in the Senate gets done in April and May, and we're likely to have it done in committee before Memorial Day. That's a great idea. Did I have one at this? Yeah, please.
Senator, as we're up talking on the Equality Act, some of us are actually going to go talk to
Good.
Republicans.
Good.
What are you hearing from them? What is the objection to the bill, number one? And number two, what is our best counter-argument against their objection?
So, yeah, this is, there's, no, there's, I'm trying to be both accurate and diplomatic. So, I mean, there are the two categories of objections are political and principled, right? So there's a political objection. Yeah, we should probably do it, but my base doesn't like it. That's a political objection. You're right, we should probably do this, but my Republican primary base electorate does not like this. And then there would be principled objections, primarily from evangelicals. In the weirdness of Senate scheduling, where you do a million things a day, I mean, I spoke this morning to the Southern Baptist Convention meeting on courage, civility, and the health of our democracy. And they decided that they needed to hear not just from Republicans, but they need to hear from some Democrats too. And I talked about equality issues, because I wanted to put on the table issues where, hey, look, we may have some differences on some of these things, but you can have the courage of your conviction, but also be civil and understand other people's positions. And you can allow them to have rights with your own opinions about that, but we're all equal in the society. We're kind of talking pluralism. And so I think now, how you deal with the two sets of objections are a little bit different. Those who have a political objection, every young person in their party believes with us that the move toward equality is, you know, and can never be turned around. It's just the North Star of our country, and basically what we do in this country since the first day is we proclaim that as a North Star, and then we wake up and realize, wait, we said it was about equality, how can we have slavery? We said it was about equality, how come we don't let women vote? We said it was about equality, how come LGBT people can't marry? we have it as a North Star. You can never get to the North Star, but you kind of wake up and realize we got a North Star. We're supposed to be orienting by the North Star. Oh, we're doing this wrong, and we make a move forward. And young people on the Republican side completely get that. They're completely with us on equality issues. So the HRC staff and others here probably would have a sense as you're talking to someone on the Republican side. Has this been a person who's ever been with us? If they've not been with us, is it more of a political objection or something in the ideological space? So that's important. And then when you're dealing with somebody in an evangelical community, I mean, the kind of argument that I tend to make is, look, I'm not telling you what you can do in your church. I mean, I'm a Catholic. My church does not commonly allow divorce, but we don't go down to the clerk's office and stop them from doing divorce papers for people who aren't Catholic. And so your church is one thing, but in society, people have to be able to operate equally in society. You may have a hard time convincing somebody with that argument, but you will make them think. You will make them think. And the good news is, I think you have enough hope built up by gains that you've seen in the past 10 years to make you feel like you can walk into that meeting confident. I may not get you today, but there's a chance that I'm going to plant the seed with you, and you are going to be voting this way sometime soon. How about, yeah, please, here, and then I'll come here.
Senator Ryan White, U.S. Bank. I hail from the bold north, Minnesota. Governor Dayton, on a state level, enacted some really critical pieces of legislation into law
Yep.
that preserve fair housing for LGBTQ members. It's nice in Minnesota because that supersedes federal policy. However, there are 29 states, as you know. It's
Right.
not the fact. Worst case scenario, if this legislation gets to the desk of the 45th president, and he decides he doesn't want to sign it.
Yeah.
What then?
Yeah, no, great question. You know, I'm not here as the attorney for the Trump administration to make their case. I think the president would sign that bill. You know, just if I listen to things that he talks about, I mean, making a prediction about President Trump is hard because it's sort of who talked to him last. But I think if that bill gets to his desk, look, he and his dad were the subject of a very news-making fair housing lawsuit back in the day. I don't think he wants to put himself back in that spot. And he would probably have people around him telling him, look, politically, you know, what you want is to be loved. That's what he wants. He wants to be loved. If you want to be loved, then you'll sign this bill. So we could think about worst case, okay, he doesn't sign it, and then or vetoes, and then can you do a veto override? I think my gut would tell me it would be more likely if we ever put this bill on this president's desk, he'd sign it. Yeah, please.
Robert Rudley from Providence, Rhode Island.
Hey, Robert.
Kaine, thank you for being here. I want to make a couple points first, and I have a question.
Sure.
The first one, I wanted to thank you for your record on fair housing and working with LGBTQ communities. I think we just introduced something with Senator Tammy Baldwin on LGBTQ.
Child welfare bill, yeah.
So important stuff, and it's nice to have an advocate like you in the Senate. Second of all, what a different place this would be right now if 2016 was different, and it should have been. And, I'm sure you've heard that before, but we definitely strongly feel that. My question is kind of a little more vague. We're talking about some specific policy here, but I want to know in 5 to 10 years, what do you think are our easy wins and our harder wins that we can focus more energy on?
That's a really good one. Well, you know, you can change laws, that doesn't change hearts. So, you know, that's often acknowledged in civil rights struggles. And I think one of the interesting things, I think Thurgood Marshall and others, when they were grappling with Brown v. Board, they felt like they got a law change, and the law change happened long before the heart change. In some ways, what we're seeing in our society is the heart change is happening before the law change. The heart change in terms of the acceptance that equality means equality and that nobody should be discriminated against because they're LGBT. You're just seeing that stat change so directly, the statistics, the polling, people's attitudes changing so directly, and the law is kind of lagging behind. And so why is the law lagging behind the heart change when often it's the heart change that lags behind the law change? I think in some ways, political polarization where, and this is certainly the case for the R's, but it's somewhat of a bipartisan comment, who participates in primaries and choosing candidates tends to drive it to the extremes. And then people feel motivated that they got to be loyal to the extremes. If you had a secret ballot among Republican senators about the Equality Act, and it was a secret poll, I mean, you'd get a lot of votes. You would get a lot of votes. But I think they're more afraid of, oh, it's going to alienate my base, and then I'm going to lose a primary. They're not worried about general election. They're worried about a primary. So I think translating growing public acceptance into legislative action is the big thing. And LGBT equality isn't the only one like this. Gun violence. There's 90+% of America that wants us to do comprehensive background checks, including NRA members, including gun owners. But we can't make it happen because one party basically feels if they do it, their base will go berserk. And so even though, again, secret ballot, they'd be with us, but on a public vote, they're worried about their own base. So I think a big challenge right now for a lot of progress is the people's will is way ahead of what Congress has been willing to do. State legislatures have been able to do some cool things on gun violence. Congress won't do it. So now I do believe that it's like tectonic plates. I mean, if the tension builds up so strongly, like, you know, here's what Congress won't do, here's what the public wants us to do. I mean, at some point the plates shift. You have the earthquake. The Congress cannot stand against the will of what people want forever without there being a shift. Knowing when that moment comes and what's the moment where it makes the shift is really hard. So that you asked a vague question and I gave you an even vaguer answer because I didn't talk about an issue, but I talked about a problem where my belief about LGBT acceptance is the heart of the country is with you, and yet the institutional reaction has lagged behind.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thank the Senator very much. We are going to end this right now so that we can take, more importantly than the work we're doing and the work the Senator's doing, selfies. So if you want to photograph with the Senator, have your phone out and have it set, and you're going to give your phone to David, and then he's going to take a picture like this.
All
So
right.
please line up here,
And
Senator.
maybe stand right in front of you.
Yes, exactly.